In September, when Japan was bidding for the 2020 Olympic Games, ultimately successfully, Shinzo Abe, the Japanese Prime Minister, promised the International Olympic Committee and the world that the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was ruined in 2011 was safe and that contamination was under control. Well, the reality doesn't look the same as that. With me today to discuss what this means for Japan, for Shinzo Abe, and for TEPCO, the utility that is still looking after the Fukushima site, is the FT's Asia editor, David Pilling. David, thanks for joining us.
That's all.
Abe promised the IOC that the site at Fukushima was under control. Is it?
I think the answer is no. It's not safe. Tokyo is far enough away, I think, to be unaffected. So in that sense, the Olympic Games ought not to be affected, barring the really unforeseeable. But at Fukushima itself, you know, we've got hundreds of tons of contaminated water pouring into the sea. We've had workers who've been actually affected by some, mildly contaminated water. I mean, in April, we had a rat bit through a cable, cutting off power, which closed down for several hours a critical cooling system. So this doesn't sound exactly like it's under control, no.
Is there a fundamental problem then at TEPCO?
Well, I think there has been a fundamental problem with TEPCO, which has now been brought to light. And it is dealing with an almost unprecedented catastrophe. You'll remember that after the 2011 disaster, in the aftermath, the government pumped in, I think, about 1 trillion yen in the form of equity, and underwrote 5 trillion yen in terms of compensation. And yet TEPCO was kind of allowed to carry on much in the way that it had before. TEPCO's responsibility really is to its shareholders. It certainly has a big responsibility to its shareholders. And that has led accusations that perhaps it's that skimping on the rescue. And that is the underlying reason for some of these mishaps that we've seen. So it seems probable that the government will at some stage have to step in.
In the long run then, does this spell the end of nuclear power in Japan?
People say, rightly, that there's virtually no nuclear power stations operating now. There were 50. And the lights are still on in Japan. In fact, the Japanese economy is growing pretty fast. And a fascinating report by Richard Katz's organization, the Oriental Economist, showed that in fact the ratio of electricity use to GDP was at its lowest since the 1980s. That may lead us to believe that Japan can both cut electricity consumption, by closing down its nuclear power stations, and grow. However, Katz actually concludes otherwise. He says that a lot of the savings have been made not through efficiency but through austerity, and he points out that there will in fact be a structural increase in the demand for electricity, particularly in the household sector. And so that unless Japan wants to actually give up some growth, it's going to have to worry about where this electricity is coming from. There's really, in a sense, a trade-off between growth potential and very real safety concerns in this very seismically volatile country. But given the thrust of Abenomics, which is really a pro-growth policy, you have to conclude that growth will win out in the end.
David Pilling, thank you very much.
Thank you.